Hi. Forrest Gump is a film that is significant for many reasons, such as its timelessness, relatable characters, and most importantly, its humor. So, the film speaks to the ups and downs of life and love, as well as to cultural trends that were going on during the 1980s. Does the film speak to culture and society? It speaks to things that relate to the film industry. It also speaks to the ups and downs of life and love, um, and issues that were not prominent or known in the early 1980s and 1990s. Throughout this presentation, I would touch on the points that the film contributed to culture and the culture contributed to the film. The film Forrest Gump tells the story of a challenged yet cunning young man as he grows and overcomes adversity and disability to make a successful inspirational life. The film begins with a feather rolling through the air till it lands at the feet of the main character, Forrest Gump. He is sitting on a bench waiting for a bus when a young woman comes and sits next to him. He greets her and offers her some chocolates before voicing the iconic phrase, my mama used to say, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. He then begins narrating the movie. As far as narrating the movie, he begins um, in a form that is retrospective, where he tells the story from what has already happened leading up to present day, and then he begins telling the story, or the movie begins narration from present day as the events are happening. The themes of the movie that influence the culture and are influenced by culture is perseverance, wisdom of the fool, love, death, and purpose. So before I begin on the cultural aspects of this movie that make it significant and timeless, I want to address something that relates to the film industry in regards to the film. Something that we have discussed earlier in the semester during a certain discussion post. I can't remember exactly which one. It was in regards to film adaptation. And film adaptation is something that is troubling or an obstacle for many director, because film adaptation lies in adequately portraying what the author envisioned while still making it interesting and worthwhile for the audience. In an article published in the Salem Press Encyclopedia, Anderson Dale covers the views of the actors in the film and how they feel that the movie was translated into the film. But what I found important in this article is that Dale also includes the viewpoints of the author of Forrest Gump, which is Winston Groom. The author of the book believed that Forrest Gump's character in the film was not adequately displayed as the quote idiot savant he had pictured him to be, and he stated that the movie quote took some of the rough edges off. And in regards to Gump's character, he believed that there was a quote lack of profanity in sanitized life. Sanitized sex life. The lack in profanity and edginess, in my opinion, can be attributed to the effects of the code error. The I also believe that Forrest's lack of edginess was meant to give more characters or more of an antagonist look or feel to the secondary character, Jenny. Jenny is portrayed as a very promiscuous, adventurous woman. She's seen in the movie as at some point being a prostitute. She was also um, heavily on drugs and could never settle down and stay in one place. I believe that the point of the film not putting Forrest as such a um, In the film, Jenny is portrayed often as being very promiscuous, in different scenes with different men that she's dating or being intimate with. She's also portrayed as being a prostitute and being on drugs. So, based off of all those things and the ways that she's portrayed, many have made the assumption that what Jenny was sick with is some form of AIDS or HIV, which is brings me to my point of how they are influenced by the culture. During the time of when the book was published and when the movie was released, AIDS was beginning to pop up very rampantly in the United States, and little to known was known about the virus. Most people believe that it only uh, affected gay males, and that they weren't sure of the ways that it was being transmitted. And so it was something that was affecting the culture as a whole, and you see that in this movie. The next topic that is important in the film is the idea of mental health. So the movie begins to address Forrest's IQ, which turns out to be a 75 and below average. The principal thinks he is just dumb and hopeless, but Forrest's mother addresses that he is different, and he is indeed different. However, neither of them address the fact of diagnoses or how to deal with the problem outside of, I guess, pushing him to be included in the regular school. As far as his mother and as far as the principal, he just believes that he should go to another school. However, his mother objects because she knows that these schools during that time period were not meant to help those with disabilities integrate into society and live a normalized life, but instead to take them out of society and take the pressure off of society to actually figure out how to deal with what was going on with them, which again speaks to the times because little was known about things like autism, which is what the film suggests based off of Forrest's actions and his behaviors that he may have. We also see forms of mental health conversation as it relates to the culture with Jenny and Lieutenant Dan. Jenny, at some point in the film, attempts to commit suicide once the things and the troubles of her life begin to weigh down on her, and the drugs that she is taking can no longer alleviate the pain. Lieutenant Dan is seen often also being very promiscuous, being involved with other women, and dealing with alcoholism as a form of dealing with his PTSD from losing his legs and being in the Vietnam War. The next influence that the film took in from culture is the American dream. With the scene that I'm about to show of Forrest's mother, where she is speaking to the principal, she says that she wants Forrest to have the same opportunities and the same education as everyone else. And this is a big thing with the American dream and culture and society during the 1980s and the 1990s. People were working hard for what they got and wanted for everyone to be able to kind of have those same opportunities of prosperity and education and growth. As we can see with civil rights movements and things of that nature during that time, there was an expansion of the rights that everyone felt that they should receive and how everyone felt that they should be treated. This to me can be related to two films that we watched earlier in the semester. And the first is Sugarcane Alley. In the film, Jose's grandmother gives him a stern talking to and tells him that she basically does everything that she does and breaks her back so that he never has to go out into those fields and that he's wasting those opportunities by being irresponsible. And we do continue to see her go over and beyond for Jose by doing all that she can to make sure he gets the best education and gets the scholarship, which eventually pays off for Jose. We also see this in the film Bicycle Thieves. Antonio is doing all that he can, chasing after this bike, chasing after what he brought so that he can bring money back home to his family to make sure that his family is taken care of. And he eventually um, comes to his senses and realizes that he, at the same time of trying to make a life for his son, he has to show his son what how to be a upright individual. This film also displays war culture. It shows the harsh reality of the Vietnam War, while it also does so in a comical way, but it does show the effects of war. It shows Forrest having symptoms of PTSD while also showing Lieutenant Dan having symptoms of PTSD as well as showing his injuries. It also shows Lieutenant Dan in the light of how veterans are struggling with life after war in the United States. Lieutenant Dan was living in a dirty motel when he was met up with Forrest. He was sleeping with women and doing drugs and alcohol to cope with the fact that he had little to no money and he also had no future, or from the way that he felt, and he was disabled, and nothing that he gave to the war helped him when he came back home, which is very accurate of the culture of that time and the culture in this time, where we often see that soldiers go off and fight for our country and then they come back home and they're at first they're greeted with open arms, and then after a while they're kind of left to fend for themselves. There's so much more that could be said about this film and about the movie. I just think that altogether it is a feel good movie that takes a lot of harsh realities of culture and presents them in a way that we can understand, but presents them in a way that we take it in. This movie will always be one of my favorites. I remember watching this in high school, and the ideas and themes of it have stuck with me forever. Now that I've gotten older, I've kind of understood what they were exactly trying to portray in this movie and realized how deep these elements of culture and society are embedded in this movie. It's definitely a must watch for anyone who hasn't seen it. I can't imagine anyone not having seen it, but yes.